Officer Bradley Chen's body cam captured the scene at 11:47 p.m. on March 14, 2021. A Honda Accord in a Ridgewood driveway. Engine running. Driver's door open. A man unconscious behind the wheel. An empty bottle of prescription sedatives on the passenger seat. And in the garage behind the car, a dark stain spreading beneath the door. Chen radioed for emergency medical services and backup. He checked the man's pulse. Faint, but present. The man was breathing, barely responsive. His lips moved when Chen spoke to him, but no words came out. Chen tried the garage door, locked from the inside. He circled the house, checking windows and doors. Everything secured. No signs of forced entry. No other vehicles in the driveway. The house lights were off except for a single lamp visible through a front window. When paramedics arrived 3 minutes later, they began treating the man for what appeared to be a drug overdose. Chen continued attempting to communicate with him. "Sir, is anyone else in the house? Do you have family here? Where's your daughter?" The man's eyes flickered open briefly. He tried to speak. Chen leaned closer to hear. "Emma," the man whispered. "Get Emma." His name was Robert Caldwell, 46 years old, an accountant who worked from home 3 days a week. He lived in this house with his 16-year-old daughter, Emma. His wife, Patricia, had died from cancer 2 years earlier. Since then, it had been just Robert and Emma. Neighbors described him as quiet, devoted to his daughter. He drove her to school every morning, picked her up every afternoon, attended every parent-teacher conference, every school play. He'd been doing everything he could to be both parents. The paramedics stabilized Robert enough for transport. As they loaded him into the ambulance, Chen made the decision he'd been dreading. He called for tools to breach the garage door. Officers forced the door open at 12:04 a.m. Emma Caldwell was inside. She'd been stabbed 17 times. She was already gone. March 14, 2021, began normally for the Caldwell house. Robert made breakfast at 6:30 a.m. the way he always did. Eggs and toast for Emma. Coffee for himself. They ate together at the kitchen table. Emma talked about a history test she had that day. Robert reminded her about a dentist appointment scheduled for Thursday. He drove her to Ridgewood High School at 7:15 a.m., watched her walk through the main entrance with her backpack and violin case. She had orchestra practice after school. She'd be home by 5:30 p.m. Robert returned home and worked from his home office until noon. He had client meetings via video call, processed tax returns, sent emails, everything routine. Emma's school day was equally ordinary. She attended 6 classes, ate lunch with her friends Ashley Martinez and Jordan Kim in the cafeteria. They discussed weekend plans, a movie they all wanted to see. Emma mentioned her father had been sad lately. The 2-year anniversary of her mother's death was approaching. Ashley suggested they all go to dinner together. Robert, Emma, Ashley, and Jordan. Make sure he wasn't alone. Emma attended orchestra practice from 3:30 to 5:15 p.m. She played second violin. The conductor praised her improvement on a difficult Brahms piece. Practice ended early. Emma texted her father at 5:12 p.m. "Done early, can you pick me up?" Robert replied immediately, "On my way." He arrived at the school at 5:24 p.m. Emma got in the passenger seat. They drove home together. The drive took 8 minutes. Security cameras at a traffic intersection captured their Honda Accord passing through at 5:29 p.m. They arrived home at 5:32 p.m. A neighbor walking her dog saw them pull into the driveway. Emma was carrying her violin case. Robert had his work laptop bag. They walked into the house through the front door. The neighbor waved. Robert waved back. That was the last time anyone outside the house saw Emma alive. What happened inside the Caldwell home over the next 6 hours would only be reconstructed through forensic evidence and Robert's eventual statement to police. According to Robert's account, given days later in the hospital, the evening started normally. He made dinner, spaghetti. Emma did homework at the kitchen table while he cooked. They ate together, watched a television show. Emma practiced violin in the living room for an hour. At approximately 9 o'clock p.m., they had an argument. Emma wanted to attend a party that weekend. Robert said no. She was upset, said he was overprotective. that she never got to do anything, that he was suffocating her. She compared him unfavorably to her mother, said her mother would have understood. The argument escalated. Emma went upstairs to her room and slammed the door. Robert sat alone in the living room. He later told investigators he became overwhelmed. The grief over his wife's death, the stress of single parenting, Emma's words about her mother. He went to the bathroom and took 2 of the anti-anxiety pills his doctor had prescribed after Patricia's death. He wanted to calm down, to think clearly, to apologize to Emma, but he took 2 more pills, then 2 more. He sat on the couch. The pills made him drowsy, disoriented, and then, according to his statement, something broke inside him. A thought that wouldn't leave, that Emma would be better off without him, that he was failing her as a father, that he was failing Patricia by not being enough for their daughter. He went to the kitchen, got a knife from the drawer. He walked upstairs to Emma's room. The forensic evidence tells the rest. Emma was sitting on her bed with headphones on, watching something on her laptop. She didn't hear him enter. The first stab wound was to her back. She tried to fight him. Defensive wounds on her hands and arms. She managed to knock the laptop to the floor, knocked over her nightstand lamp, but the sedatives had made Robert slow and clumsy. The attack was chaotic, frenzied. 17 stab wounds, total. When it was over, Emma was dead on her bedroom floor. Robert dragged her body down the stairs. He later couldn't explain why. He put her in the garage, covered her with a tarp from his workbench. Then he went back to the bathroom. Took the rest of the bottle of pills, 23 tablets. He got in his car, started the engine, thought about driving away, thought about driving into a wall. Instead, he just sat there in the driveway with the door open, waiting to die. A neighbor driving home from a late shift saw the car running in the driveway with the door open. It was unusual. The neighbor slowed down, but didn't stop. Didn't want to intrude. Continued home. By 11:30 p.m., Robert was unconscious. At 11:45 p.m., another neighbor, an off-duty nurse named Patricia Brennan, who lived 3 houses down, was walking her dog past the Caldwell house. She saw the same thing. Car running, door open, nobody visible. She approached the driveway, called out, no response. She got closer and saw Robert slumped in the driver's seat. She called 911. Officer Chen arrived at 11:47 p.m. Officer Chen's first priority was the unconscious man in the car, but his second priority was the question Robert had been trying to answer before he lost consciousness. Where was Emma? Once backup units arrived, officers began a systematic search of the property. The front door was unlocked. They entered the house and announced their presence. No response. They cleared the first floor. Kitchen, living room, bathroom, home office, empty. They moved upstairs. 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. The master bedroom was undisturbed. A guest room appeared unused. But the 3rd bedroom, clearly a teenager's room, showed signs of a struggle. A laptop on the floor, broken. A nightstand lamp knocked over. The bedsheets pulled partially off the mattress. And blood. On the carpet. On the walls. Spattered across a poster of a classical orchestra. The officers secured the scene and called for detectives and crime scene investigators. Detective Luis Navarro arrived at 12:35 a.m. He observed the bedroom scene and immediately focused on 2 critical questions. Where was the victim, and where was the weapon? Neither were in the bedroom. Investigators processed the house methodically. They found blood traces on the stairway carpet, a trail leading from the bedroom down the stairs, through the kitchen, to a door leading to the attached garage. The garage door was still locked from the inside, the same door Officer Chen had been unable to open from the outside. Detectives unlocked it from the kitchen side and opened it. Emma Caldwell was there, covered with a blue plastic tarp, dead for approximately 3 hours based on body temperature and rigor mortis. The medical examiner counted 17 stab wounds, most to the torso and back, defensive wounds on both hands. Cause of death: exsanguination from multiple sharp force injuries. Time of death: estimated between 9:30 and 10:30 p.m. A kitchen. Knife: an 8-inch chef's knife from a block on the Caldwell kitchen counter, was found in the garage next to the body, the murder weapon. While crime scene investigators processed the garage and bedroom, Detective Navarro examined the rest of the house for context. He found Robert's home office, financial documents, tax returns, nothing unusual, a family photo on the desk, Robert, Emma, and a woman who was clearly Emma's mother. The photo was recent enough that the mother appeared healthy. Navarro would later learn she'd died in 2019. In the upstairs bathroom, investigators found a prescription bottle. Robert Caldwell's name on the label. Alprazolam, prescribed by Dr. Stephen Martinez 3 months earlier. The bottle should have contained 27 tablets. It was empty. In the car, paramedics had found Robert's wallet and phone. Detective Navarro obtained both from the hospital. The phone's last activity was the text message exchange with Emma at 5:12 p.m. Nothing after that. Neighbors were interviewed throughout the night and early morning. Patricia Brennan described finding Robert unconscious and calling 911. The dog-walking neighbor described seeing Emma and Robert arrive home at 5:32 p.m. A neighbor across the street reported hearing nothing unusual that evening. No shouting, no screams, no sounds of a struggle. Emma's friends Ashley Martinez and Jordan Kim were contacted by police at 3:47 a.m. Both were devastated. Both confirmed Emma had been in good spirits during orchestra practice. Neither knew of any problems at home beyond Emma mentioning her father had been sad about the anniversary of her mother's death. School records showed Emma was a good student. 3.7 GPA. No disciplinary issues. Active in orchestra. Well-liked by teachers and peers. Robert's medical records were obtained through emergency authorization. He'd been seeing a therapist since his wife's death. The therapist, Dr. Rachel Foster, described him as grieving but stable. No indications of violent ideation. The anti-anxiety medication had been prescribed due to panic attacks and insomnia related to his grief. By dawn, the physical evidence was clear. Robert Caldwell had stabbed his daughter to death and then attempted suicide. What remained unclear was why. Robert Caldwell survived. The overdose should have killed him. 23 tablets of alprazolam combined with the 2-hour delay before discovery should have been fatal. But the paramedics reached him in time. His stomach was pumped at Ridgewood Hospital. He was intubated and placed on life support. He remained unconscious for 36 hours. Detective Navarro placed a guard outside his hospital room. When Robert woke up, if he woke up, he would be arrested for murder. On March 16th at 6:15 a.m., Robert regained consciousness. The first thing he said was, "Where's Emma?" The nurse in the room didn't answer. She called for the doctor. The guard outside the room notified Detective Navarro. Robert asked again, "Where's my daughter? Is she okay?" He didn't remember. The combination of the sedatives and the psychological trauma had created a complete memory gap. The last thing he could recall was Emma being upset about not being allowed to go to a party. He remembered taking some pills to calm down. Nothing after that. Detective Navarro arrived at the hospital at 7:30 a.m. He read Robert his Miranda rights. Robert was confused, asked why he was under arrest, asked again about Emma. Navarro told him Robert's reaction was documented in the detective's report: immediate denial, disbelief. Then, as the reality set in, complete breakdown. He had to be sedated again. Over the next 3 days, forensic psychiatrist Dr. Helen Park evaluated Robert multiple times. He was placed under suicide watch. His memories of that evening remained fragmented and incomplete. He remembered the argument, remembered taking the pills, remembered feeling overwhelmed and despairing, but the actual act of violence existed only as a vague nightmare that he insisted couldn't be real. Dr. Park's evaluation concluded that Robert had been in a severe dissociative state, brought on by the combination of benzodiazepine intoxication, acute grief, and psychological stress. He had experienced what she termed a brief psychotic episode with dissociative features. His actions during that period were consistent with someone not fully in control of their faculties or aware of their actions. But awareness and intent were legal questions, not medical ones. By March 19th, Robert's medical condition had stabilized enough for him to be formally charged. Detective Navarro returned to the hospital with the district attorney's office. Robert was charged with first-degree murder, felony murder in the course of child endangerment, and aggravated assault. His court-appointed attorney arrived the same day. Robert made one request. He wanted to plead guilty to everything. He didn't want a trial, didn't want to put Emma's friends through testimony, didn't want her memory dragged through a courtroom. He wanted to accept responsibility and die in prison. But the law doesn't allow immediate guilty pleas in capital cases. There would be evaluations, hearings, procedures. Robert's statement to police, given on March 22, 2021, provided the timeline investigators had been unable to fully reconstruct: the argument with Emma, the escalating panic and grief, the decision to take the pills, the dissociative state that followed, the fragmented nightmare of violence that he couldn't fully remember but accepted as real because the evidence demanded it. He described dragging Emma to the garage but couldn't explain why. He described taking the rest of the pills and getting in the car but couldn't explain what he'd intended to do. Drive away? Drive into something? Just sit there and die? He remembered thinking that Emma would be better off without him, that he was failing her. The cruelest irony was that the thought was wrong, but the action made it true. Robert Caldwell was transported from Ridgewood Hospital to Bergen County Jail on March 24, 2021. He was processed and placed in protective custody in the medical unit due to ongoing suicide risk. He was 46 years old, an accountant with no criminal record, no history of violence, no history of mental illness beyond the grief and anxiety following his wife's death. Neighbors, friends, colleagues, everyone described him the same way: devoted father, quiet, responsible, loving. None of it mattered now. His arraignment occurred via video link on March 26th. He appeared on screen from the jail medical unit, pale and hollow-eyed, wearing an orange jumpsuit. Judge Martha Calderon presided. The charges were read: first-degree murder, felony murder during child endangerment, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Robert's attorney, public defender Daniel Torres, entered a plea of not guilty on Robert's behalf. Robert protested, said he wanted to plead guilty. Torres explained that the process required psychiatric evaluation before any guilty plea could be accepted in a murder case. The judge ordered comprehensive psychiatric evaluation and set bail at $5 million. Robert would remain in custody. Emma's funeral was held on March 28, 2021. Robert was not permitted to attend. His attorney requested compassionate release for the service. The request was denied. Over 200 people attended Emma's funeral at Ridgewood Community Church. Her orchestra performed a Brahms piece she'd been working on. Her friends Ashley and Jordan read a statement describing Emma's kindness, her humor, her talent. Patricia Brennan, the neighbor who'd found Robert and called 911, attended and wept silently in the back row. Robert's sister Margaret flew in from Oregon. She was his only living family. She told reporters outside the church that she didn't understand what had happened, that her brother had loved Emma more than anything, that grief had destroyed him, that she'd lost both her niece and her brother on the same night. The psychiatric evaluations continued through April and May. 3 separate psychiatrists examined Robert. All reached similar conclusions. He had been experiencing a severe psychological break at the time of the crime, exacerbated by benzodiazepine intoxication. He met criteria for diminished capacity, but not legal insanity. The district attorney's office made a decision. They would not seek the death penalty. Robert's lack of criminal history, the context of grief and mental health crisis, and his clear remorse all factored into the decision. They would seek life imprisonment without parole. On June 8, 2021, Robert appeared in court again. This time, Judge Calderon accepted his guilty plea to first-degree murder. The other charges were dropped as part of the plea agreement. Robert waived his right to a trial. He made a brief statement. "I killed my daughter. Nothing I say can change that. Nothing can bring her back. I don't deserve mercy. I don't deserve forgiveness. I just want to say to everyone who loved Emma, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." His voice broke. He couldn't continue. On July 15, 2021, Robert Caldwell was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Judge Calderon delivered the sentence with visible emotion. She acknowledged the tragedy of the case. A father who'd lost his wife to cancer, then lost his own mind in grief, then killed his daughter in a dissociative episode he couldn't fully remember. She acknowledged the psychiatric evidence, the lack of criminal history, the clear remorse. But she also acknowledged Emma, 16 years old, talented, kind, loved, murdered by the person who was supposed to protect her above all others. The sentence was mandatory for first-degree murder. There was no discretion. Robert would die in prison. He's currently incarcerated at New Jersey State Prison in Trenton. According to prison records, he remains on psychiatric medication and suicide watch protocols. He has declined all interview requests. His sister Margaret visits once a month. Emma's friends established a memorial scholarship in her name at Ridgewood High School, the Emma Caldwell Memorial Scholarship for Young Musicians. It awards $2,000 annually to a student pursuing music education. Ashley Martinez and Jordan Kim created it and spent 2 years fundraising. The first scholarship was awarded in 2023. Patricia Brennan, the neighbor who found Robert and called 911, told a local newspaper in 2023 that she thinks about that night constantly. She wonders if she'd called 911 even 5 minutes earlier, if Emma could have been saved. Medical examiners told her no. Emma had been dead for more than 2 hours by the time Brennan found Robert, but Brennan still wonders. Robert's case sparked discussions about mental health support for grieving parents and the dangers of benzodiazepine misuse. Several advocacy groups used his case as an example of how untreated psychological trauma can lead to tragedy, but those discussions faded. Emma's name faded from the news. The case became another file in the archives. Officer Bradley Chen, the first responder whose Bodycam captured that night, left law enforcement in 2022. In an exit interview with his department, he cited the Caldwell case as a contributing factor. He described arriving at what looked like a routine overdose call and discovering it was a murder scene with the victim still hidden in the garage. He described Robert's whispered words, "Get Emma," and not understanding until it was too late. He works in private security now. The house on the quiet street in Ridgewood sold in 2022. The new owners renovated extensively. Neighbors say they've never told them what happened there. Emma Caldwell would be 19 years old now. She wanted to study music education in college. She wanted to teach orchestra to middle school students. Her friends say she would have been great at it. She was patient, encouraging. She loved helping younger students with difficult passages during orchestra practice. Robert kept asking for his daughter, kept asking if she was okay. He asked until the Bodycam footage ended, until Officer Chen couldn't answer anymore, until there was no good answer left to give. Emma was 16 years old. She had defensive wounds on both hands. She fought back. It wasn't enough.